Okay, so it's a special schus to share these halachis, especially in honor of the yahrzeit of Zusha Shalom. In general, it's a big schus that he had to teach so many years, so many talmidim, and particularly in his last years teaching halacha. But I don't know if everybody's familiar, but those that knew him knew that he also had a special interest in the more obscure in Yanim of Halacha and more obscure in Yanim of Torah, and to be enforcing these ideas, things that people didn't necessarily understand or didn't have necessarily in with. So I believe that Zmani Hayayim B'Halacha is one of those things that everybody has an opinion about. It affects all of us, but not so many people understand them. Now the truth is, it's a short segment. Obviously, we're not going to be able to cover all the Yanim Zmanim, not even a small portion of it. But maybe we'll come out with something interesting. They asked me to speak about the morning Zmanim, starting with the night turning into day, which is Leis Shachar, so to speak. We'll discuss exactly what that means. But I was thinking, the whole Gemara, the whole Shas begins Me'im Sekun Nishma Ba'arvin, which essentially is talking about Zmanim, but it talks about Arvin, it talks about the evening. And the majority of the Sugis of Zmanim are really talking about evening. Talking about Shkia and Ben Hashmoshes, and the bigger sugis are much more elaborated upon with regards to the evening zmanim, and you have to extrapolate that and understand it also with regards to the morning zmanim. So I thought it's a little bit maybe out of place, but I realized like this: the truth is, Meim Zikarin Shema Ba'arvin is really shaykh to Golos. The idea of Shema Ba'arvin to bring the into Arvin, into Golos, into nighttime. And the idea of transferring the night into day is really the idea of Gula. So the idea of Kishma Shachris. So it's apropos talking now the time just Atat Bezman Gula. So I think that's apropos. Another interesting thing. We'll start off over here. Slideshow. Into this. 1 second. Bear with me. Slideshow. No. Good. So the idea of Zmanim is something that's discussed, again, Shas begins with Me'im Sekir Shema Ba'arvin, and Chazal, like they deal with all in Yanim of Shurim and Zmanim. They don't actually tell you minutes and weights and measures, but rather they talk about physical phenomena that everybody could observe, Kazayas, Sekabetza, or talking about seeing the sun over here, sun over there, how many stars. So these are things that ostensibly people should be able to pick up by themselves, but not necessarily so. So the ideas of Zmanim throughout the Poskim, there's basically two approaches in this issue. There are those who try to understand the Gemaras very literally and relate it, to minutes, mil, and basically understand it, as, so to speak, a Gzeres HaKasov, so to speak. This is what Chazal said. This is what it is, no matter where you are and how it works. And then you have those like the Alter Rebbe and others, the Gra, that really had a very deep understanding of the astronomy and deep understanding of the sugis, and were able to put everything together and be able to explain how all the sugis are really very accurate, and everything is describing very specific astronomical phenomena, and it really depends on every place and every situation. And I call them everything works perfectly. So I thought it's a shkacha pratis that they asked me to speak about this Indian today. That's today's Heim Yom. So we have over here Yom Zayin Shvat. So it says over here, B'Yis Ad Marazakim B'Teisha Shona. When Alter Rebbe was 9 years old, Lamar Chachmas Handasa V'Atchuna. He learned the art, so to speak, the chachma of geometry and tchuna and astronomy. And these two fields are very interrelated with regards to understanding the halachas that are related to Zmani Hayayim. Because if a person understands astronomy, doesn't understand how to calculate the cheshbonis, he doesn't understand, that we're talking about spheres and how to understand the distances and how to calculate those distances based on spheres. So he's going to be off. So this is what it says over here. When the Alter was 10 years old, he already calculated, so to speak, a calendar for 15 years. When he was 12 years old, he had the opportunity to teach Kiddush HaChodesh of the Rambam, and the Geoinim, Shoyei Beis Hamayim, that were at that presentation, so to speak, they didn't find their hands and their feet in the Beis Hamedrash, which seems to indicate that these sugis, even the Alter Rebbe's days, most people did not have a good yad in it, and the Alter Rebbe at a young age was able to have a yad in these sugis. So you go to shul and people say, oh, 72 minutes, 90 minutes, this is 18, 24, they have all these numbers. A lot of these people, they don't, not to disparage anybody, but the reality is they don't necessarily know what they're relating to. And us, Chassidic Chabad, that have the Alter Rebbe, even though there are still a lot of discussions, there are still a lot of things that are not necessarily clear or maybe seem to be inconsistent in the various writings of the Alter Rebbe, but there's much more clarity and there's much more authority with regard to Zmanim. And that's why when it comes to Yom Zmanim, you ask Be'el Abba Sharav, and you come to a clear Shita, what's Machmer Zayin, Mikol Zayin. The Alter Rebbe has a gang in these things, and it's very well established. Not just that, in the beginning of the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch, so we know the Alter Rebbe wrote Shulchan Aruch over a period of many years. We know Alter Rebbe began writing Shulchan Aruch when he was yet by the Magid. He wrote Talmud Torah, Chas Pesach, maybe some other halachas, but it was throughout his whole life that he was writing Shulchan Aruch. The Bnei Mechaber, the Alter Rebbe's sons, write that it wasn't until he was very old that he wrote Nida and some other halachas. So we know that Alter Rebbe also wrote Amdura Basra. At some point, we don't know exactly when, at some point the Alter Rebbe decided to write Shulchan Aruch again. We only had the first 4 simanim. We don't know if he wrote the rest of the simanim, we don't know if he didn't write the rest of the simanim, but we had the first 4 simanim. And in that Amdura Basra, the Alter Rebbe also incorporates not just ideas of Kabbalah, but also it's Madura Basra. It's a whole other way of formulation, of understanding of many different ideas. So one of the big differences in the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch with regard to Zmanim is that in Shulchan Aruch, he always takes an approach of many of the previous Shittas, Magen Avraham, Chabad, Ramah, so on and so further about Zmanim, takes the approach of the Bein Tam, which I don't know how much we'll be able to get into it, but maybe I'll try to give an overview a little bit later on, which is much more of a literal understanding of the sugis. And in the Siddur, later on, the Alter Rebbe has a total chazara on every different level. He says we can't accept the Bein Tam at all, not even b'diavad. And he goes on and he explains things based on the astronomy and based on the sugis of Shas and based on the Goinim and so on and so further. So in this Madura Basra, just in the beginning of the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch, he's discussing a totally different sugya, but he ends up mentioning the idea of chatzais, and he gives us a little bit of understanding of the whole idea of Zmanim, which I assume was written at the same time, or at least closer in time to when he wrote the Siddur, but he wrote about the Zmanim the way he understood it later on in his life, the way we pass it today. But this is not just a chazara, so to speak, and explaining the Zmanim based on the way it's understood in the Siddur, but it's also explaining a much deeper idea, so to speak, that we have to understand with regard to Zmanim. It is like this: is that Yidden are gvuli. We're humans. We have limitations. The Eibishter created us, but He also desired that we should connect to the Eibishter. That's bligvul, right? It's divine. And there's always going to be some challenge. How do you connect the gvul to the bligvul? So tefillah, mitzvahs, Torah, these are all opportunities in different ways to connect the gvul to the bligvul. The problem is that it doesn't connect. There's always going to be gvul, and it has limitation. And there's bligvul. So see, either you're magbul the Eibishter Rachman, and that's obviously problematic for many different reasons, or you're marking yourself, so to speak, you invite yourself in a way that you don't have these limitations anymore. And that could bring a person to not keep halacha properly, not to keep the limitations of halacha. This explains like Bola Atzmis and so on and so forth. But Zmanim is the place where you mamish find that Hagbala with a major challenge, because you're trying to do a mitzvah. You're trying to do it in a way that's, sometimes takes more than that Zman. And even the whole idea that the Eibishter cares this time, that time, what's going on over here? So the Alter Rebbe gives a little bit of hasbara over here, and he says in Sif Ches that the Zman Chalitz Alayla, we'll go through it fast. The Zman Chalitz Alayla who shav b'kayitz v'cherif lebi beis shoyis hachatzis siyayim shu emtza Alayla mamish v'yitzas l'mayla chosman al-mokim. The idea of chatzos, right, is always exactly 12 hours after the chalitz of the day. So the day is divided into 12 hours. It doesn't make a difference. It's winter or summer. The 12 hours later will be the next chatzos. We don't care how long the day is, the night is, but it's always going to be 12 hours later. He says, but Poil, every place, every locale is going to be a different place chatzos. So he's saying this is a zman melumayla, and there's a time for his ratzon. The Eibishter is, he's not limited to this time or that time, and every place has a different time. So what's going on here? He says, even though that the days and nights are really altering, they're all really changing according to the planetary situations and the distances. Right? So it's not relevant. It doesn't change at all this idea of the Isra'atzin, and it doesn't diminish at all this idea that we're trying to fit ourselves into a specific time. All these ideas are all connected. That all these things the Eibishter wants should be done in a specific time, and regardless of the fact that the world is spherical and is going to be always connecting to a specific time, that there is that Isra'atzin, but it doesn't mean that you shouldn't try to tap into Isra'atzin, or you shouldn't have to tap into Isra'atzin of your time. Because he explains in the parentheses, because obviously the Eibush is taka b'yom time, right? And the idea of the Yechudim, where you're trying to accomplish the Kriyas through Shabbos Yom Tov, those things are taka not limited in time. But the Eibush made that it should be present. You should be able to tap into that Bligvul idea by chatzos in every specific place, or within 24 hours on Shabbos in every specific place, or 48 hours in Yom Tov in every specific place. So that's our mandate. It's our mandate to understand these manim, and it's our mandate to understand how it relates to our specific time, in our specific place, in order to mile that place, and not just that place, but the time of that place. Explain the this idea, Barichis, how it's not just the place, but the time also you have to mile. We call Makim English yet, but I thought it's a relevant point to understand before we get into the idea of manim. Okay. So it's a big problem, and we'll show you in the Mishnah, Gemara, and Halachas how this issue is really problematic. The problem is like this: the problem is that the night is dark, and when the exact moment of day happens is not something that's really discernible. We'll see soon that there is an exact moment that day happens, and it's way before it gets light outside.
The rooster's going to do it.
Not necessarily. So this is something that's halachically problematic that the Gemara, the Mishnah also identified. So let's see. We have a Mishnah. Mishnah Megillah Avchaf is like this. Ein koines Megillah. You don't read Megillah. V'loi malin. Now, just point out, Megillah you read by night as well. So what's the issue of reading Megillah by night? Because it says Bizmaneim. You may put a mail. Right? The idea of reading Megillah is supposed to be done by day. Chazal added to the mitzvah Medivrei Seifrim of Mordechai and Esther, and they made it by night as well. But really, the mitzvah Megillah is by day. And for whatever reason, if a person doesn't have the ability to do both, it's possible, such a situation comes along. So you do by day, not by night. So ein keres Megillah. So you don't read Megillah. You don't do a bris milah, because it has to be by yom. Tevlin is talking about not tefillos neither, because that's not by night, but all the tefillos, like explains, Shmer Zinkin Yom, Tefillah Zava, Zav, all the tefillos, call tefillos Tevlin by yom, Chutz Minida, right? So all those things would have to be done. Mazin for paraduma for the entire person. Yeah, loy titbel achetoni zechama. Right, all these situations cannot be done, even though it's technically daytime. We'll see until Tani Tzachana. Tani Tzachana means you actually see the nitzuts of the Chana. Nitzuts of the Chana means that you actually see the light coming over the horizon, not the light, but actually the sun coming over the horizon. Just worthwhile to mention for frame of reference that this is the counterpart, so to speak, the flip side of what we call Shkiyas HaChama. Shkiyas HaChama is when the sun goes below the horizon, but there's still a lot of light that's going to be seen for quite a bit of time, and we're not going to go into it, but the place can discuss how much time that is. Similarly, Nitzachama is that there was much light that was coming before, and then suddenly you start to see the actual ball of light, the nitzuts, you see those actual rays of the actual sun coming above the horizon. The kulan shasm shalom b'shachar kosher. But all of those mitzvahs, notwithstanding the fact they have to be done by Yoim, and we say therefore it has to be done mishnei tzachama, but we say really Oil Shachar is good enough. You just don't know when that is. So the Gemara is not so clear about it. So the Gemara has to define it. So Amar Abzeda, the Gemara over there, in Beis. So Amar Abzeda, mihacha. So the Gemara brings a proof over here from Pasuk. People are working, right? And they're holding their spears. So it seems to indicate it. That's when they begin to Shachar and finish Tetzei Chavim. And another pasuk is brought to prove this point. It says that the night time is the time for watch, daytime is time for work. So Gemara says, "My v'omer." Why have to bring two proofs? One proof is good enough. It says, so you would think maybe Mulu Shachar really is not your mama. It's mash like that in the pasuk that it's your mama, that's daytime. And maybe when it becomes shkia, that's already nighttime. It's not the Tetzei Chavim. Yeah? And this happens to be some people get up earlier and they work early and they work late, but it's not really day. He says, no. That's the reason we bring the second pasuk. That in reality, day taka is from Alois HaShachar. So halachically, with regards to all the ideas of day, really it should have been from Alois HaShachar. And then we'll see, maybe not. But halachically, based on this Gemara and this Mishnah, that the day begins by Alois HaShachar. Okay, but again, we don't know when that is. We don't know exactly how to determine it. Okay, so let's take a look at the Alter Rebbe in Simon Ches with regards to the Zman Krishma. The Torah tells us, we say it every day in Krishma, we say B'shach Chol Kumecha, right? You have to say Krishma, Minat Torah, you say it when you go to sleep at night, when you wake up in the morning. So Zman Krishma B'shach is Minat Torah. So the Alter Rebbe tells us over here in Simon Ches, what is the proper time for Krishma Minat Torah? It's Shalom B'shach. When it gets morning. Morning is when the first moment of daybreak, even if you can't discern it yet. It's not necessarily a time Uv Kumecha, people waking up. We even mentioned before in the previous Gemara, it could be only Mikam B'chashki. Some people wake up early, some people wake up late. Yeah? And I'm going to see later on, not in this Sif, but the next Sif, when I bring it over here, that the Alter Rebbe says that you could say Krishma until 3 hours, because some people wake up mamish late. Just to mention. So he says, so when is Zman Krishma? It's the Shachar. Why? Because it's Miktas Miyadim Regim Lakum Mitasam. Because there are some people get up at that time. So even though it's a minority, but it says B'kuf Kumecha, Lashon Yachid. It doesn't mean Kumechem. Everybody gets up. Some people get up. You go even after a minority. Yeah, if you read Krishma before that, you're not Yaitse. Even though some people get up even before Leisa Shachar. But by Leisa Shachar, technically, if you read Krishma, you were Yaitse the mitzvah. Now, the second paragraph. The Chum also are Chaka, Vigeder, but the Chamim, they wanted to make sure that things are not getting confused. So therefore, they made distancing, they made a buffer zone. Yeah. Vitiknu, and they established, they shouldn't say it when there's a minority of people getting up, they should say it when the majority of people are getting up. That means when it starts to get light. So what does that mean? You said before only 2 times. You said there's Leisa Shachar, which that's morning, and there's Neitzacham, that's when you should do these mitzvahs. Go to the mikveh, and the Mila, and Kerem Megillah. Over here we have a new time. So he says that the day gets bright enough that you're able to recognize your friend from 4 amas away. He says, what type of friend? Know him a little bit. Okay, so this is already a new distinction. So far we have 3 zmanim in the morning. You have Amud Shachar, Leisa Shachar, interchangeable concepts, that terms that is not necessarily discernible. That's the first moment of daybreak. Then you have the idea of Yor Hayom, when it becomes bright outside. You don't see the sun yet, but you can see that it's bright outside. Similar to the way after Shkia, you can still see people, even though you don't see the sun anymore. The sun went down. And then you have Neitzacham. Now, I wasn't going to do it in this order, but maybe it's Kedai to bring this shtick over here just to explain how Amud Shachar is so tricky. And Al Tereb in the Siddur in Hilchos Sfiras Haimer, he tells us very bekitzer about the mitzvah Sfiras Haimer, because the majority of Sfiras Haimer he talks about in Shulchan Aruch, but he adds a few points that he didn't refine in Shulchan Aruch, and maybe he held differently than the Shulchan Aruch. He tells it this over here. I highlighted it. Uzman haschos amud hashachar michai ir ve'elech medinas elas v'niyas. What's the time of Amud hashachar from Lag Baimer in the northern countries? Others speaking in Russia. Same thing with regards to Germany, France, England. Same issue in all of Northern Europe. Not necessarily the same dates from Lag Baimer, but in the summer months. It says, what's the time of Amud hashachar? It says b'chatzos halayla. B'chatzos halayla. That makes sense. Chatzos, we said before, brought to the beginning of Shulchan Aruch, that it's always 12 hours after the previous chatzos. Yeah, doesn't make a difference how big the day is, how small the day is. Chatzos, half. So how could it be that you're going to have chatzos and the morning at the same time? Yeah, you have a big bagel, you have a small bagel, big pizza, small pizza. The half is always in the center. It makes a difference how big the pizza is, right? It's always the same thing. So how could it be that the half is really the end? She says, therefore, you shouldn't make a bracha on Sfiras Haimer after chatzos in those countries in the summer. Yeah, and he says like that throughout the summer until Shvas B'Tammuz. And therefore, he says from Shvas B'Tammuz it's forbidden to eat. And those who are in England, right, and those who are in these places, they know that Motzei Shabbos you can quickly make Havdalah, make a shkukim of Malka, and then it's ready Shvas B'Tammuz. 1 o'clock in the morning. As Zayah does. The question is, why is this like this? So this is a bigger discussion, but essentially what Al Tereb is saying is like this. He's saying is that Aleis Shachar is not a time that you can necessarily define yourself. And the reason for this is because it's astronomical time. It's a time that's not based on a certain amount of minutes before Netzacham necessarily. It's based on the position of the sun. So if you have a country that's very, very balanced in the equator and starts to the latitude, so you're going to have 12 hours, all good. Even if it's 10 and 14, it's also good. But when you have a country that's very north, technically very south as well, so then you end up that the sun never goes down so far. At night, maybe it goes down. It's not to Copenhagen, it's not to Petersburg, but even a regular place like Manchester or London or Frankfurt, such places. So the sun goes down. I don't know. I didn't check the calendar exactly. It goes down 8 degrees, 9 degrees, 10 degrees. Doesn't go down 20 degrees. Doesn't go down 16 degrees. Different sheets of what Aleis Shachar is. So being that it never goes down so far, so when it comes to the center of the night, then it starts to go up a little bit. So it happens Shkia because Shkia is when it goes down just below the horizon. Let's say it's 6 degrees, 8 degrees, whatever cheshbon you have. So it goes beyond that. Most places, not everywhere, but most places. But then when it gets to the depth of the night, it starts to go up. It's very Aleis Shachar. But that can still be a few hours until Netzachama or until Mashiach. So it's obviously something that you're not really picking up. So has the master you. He's saying you're not going to pick it up because it's still going to be dark for a long time. But you have to know that it's very technically morning and you can't make a bracha anymore on Sfiras Haimer and you can't eat. Okay. So let's take a look over here at Tefillah Shachris. So in Simpei Tes, the Al Tereb tells with regards to Tefillah Shachris, we have a similar issue. Zman HaTfilis is Zman HaTmidim, right? The Gemara tells in Tefillah Shachar that why are they attacking Tfilis? Tfilis connected to Tiknun. It's another opinion, but that's a general approach in Halacha that it was established based on the corresponding times for the Kabbanis and Beis Hamikdash. So when was the proper time for Tom Shal Shachar? When was the morning? Yeah. So what is the halachic boiker? Amud hashachar. It says Maschil Mishal Amud hashachar begins from the time that the morning begins. What is that? Now the Rebbe tells us what it is. Shu'er hanoitis me'acham mizrach mahalach daled milin koydem neitzacham. That is the sun rises right in the east. Yeah. So he says that it's the sun the light that starts to shine from the sun in the east at a distance of 4 mil. We're going to discuss later on if we get time. If you ask me, no, what's the distance of 4 mil? But the idea is that if okay, we'll cut it short. So the idea is that if you translate milim into degrees rather than into actual times, because you translate into times, like many of the literalists understand it, and many other shittas, like the Alter Rebbe, so you would end up with a little bit of absurdities that some places, it would be light outside, some people very dark outside, and same thing to and Chavim, because not every place has the shir haneshef, the time that takes the sun to set doesn't always set the same amount of time. Because it depends on the curvature of the earth and which placement they are. Also depends on the seasons and the heat and everything else. So therefore, the Alter Rebbe says obviously we're talking not about Daud Milan as distance and specific amount of minutes, which would be understood either as 72 minutes or would be understood as 90 minutes or possibly even 120 minutes. If you say it's 5 million, like V'chaim says. But the idea is that at that time, when it's so far below the horizon, which is corresponding essentially to what Rabbeinu Tam says is Tzitzit Chav by night, you don't see a difference. It's way after night, right? An hour after hour's man. That's when you have Rabbeinu Tam's man by night, better for most opinions, and it's way dark outside. So that's a time of the Moed Shachar. So that's times it's obvious that people are not going to be able to understand, and therefore, being that was a confusing time, Beis Mikdash itself, they had this problem. The fish of Machas, the fish of Machas boldly told us, because the taka happened one time. They in the Beis Mikdash made this mistake. It was still in the depths of the night, and they saw some brightness. The brightness really was just a very bright moon. Yeah, they thought that it's a little bit like coming up in Mizrach in the east side. So therefore, they made a takana that you don't start doing the kabbanis until later on, right? To which time? So we're going to see it a little bit different than we said before. So he says the pichach in the next paragraph. Gam tfus hashachar, shachar as well. Zman hamaschem et hashachar. Technically, the proper time is from the morning. That's the time of Thomas Shachar, and you can do it from Elis Shachar. But the proper time to do it is when you actually see the sun, which is the ball of the sun actually coming above the horizon. So, which means not from the time of Mishiyakir, that when you can see your friend, rather Shemon Esrei should be done from Netzach Hama. Why? When you see already, you know that it's already Elis Shachar. So that should be enough to ascertain that it's the right time. Not going to make mistakes anymore. He says it's another reason. The other reason is that we have an Indian that you should be seen. You should present yourself to Eibishter. You should connect to Eibishter, to daven when the sun comes up, right? It's a similar reason why people daven in the evening. The Gemara says, yeah, this, you are seen with the sun. Sun comes up, sun goes down. Okay, but he says, but nevertheless, if you daven taka earlier from the Shachar Yetza, and you technically the Chachil allowed to do that if it's Shasat Chak. If you have to go out early, so then it becomes Shasat Chak. It becomes the Chachil Adami, and that's okay. Yeah, and over here in Sif Test Alter says as well. You could daven mishum the Shachar, but it's not so posh. We see over here back to Hilchos Kishma in Sivav. The Alter Rebbe says that if you take running out, so we said that Shachar could daven early from Amud Shachar. Yeah, so technically Kishma also could do Amud Shachar. Why? Because again, you don't have a choice, and you have clocks nowadays. You know exactly what it is. You're not going to make a mistake. And we said that Zman Kima means even mute of coming, even a minority of people are getting up, so it should be okay. So, but nevertheless, the last line over here he says, Mikol Makom. That's the regards to Shmoneh. That's the regards to Kishma. But you have to make Kishma is not just about Uv Kumecha. It's not just about the Karban Tomish or Shachar, which is about morning time. So as long as we ascertain that it's morning, it's okay. But we speak about Yetzer Ma'odes. We're speaking about benefiting from the sun. And before you see the sun, how can you make a bracha on Yetzer Ma'odes? So that cannot be done before Mishi Yakir. So on a practical level, even though technically you could daven from a Leisa Shachar, daven and say Krishma, b'diavad, or when Shas Chak it comes the Chachila, so to speak. But daven properly, it's an order to daven and continue with Birchas Krishma and Krishma together. You have to skip otherwise and go around. You can't do Mishiyaker. There's another problem. The problem is other mitzvahs as well, tzitzis and tefillin. So let's take a look over here with regard to tzitzis. Yeah. When do you start making bracha on tzitzis? Yashem Mishiyaker mitchil shabbat shabbat. Yeah. Yashem Mishiyal Meshachar. Yeah. Says why could you make a bracha Mishiyal Meshachar? It's understood. The second opinion Mishiyaker because of Ismaisa, you have to be able to see it. But Yal Meshachar, you don't see it yet. Yeah. Says you do see it a little bit. You don't see the distinction between the white and the blue. Says you can see it. The poil, with regards to putting on tzitzis before Mishiyaker, really it should be done Mishiyaker. But if you put on before Mishiyaker, it's also okay. But the Alter Rebbe says that you should be a mashiv tziyesa. You should make a bracha if you do it earlier, and you should be mashiv tziyesa. You should just mish your tzitzis. You should, like in regards to tefillin also, there are other mitzvahs that you're continuing to do the mitzvah. If you put it on, if you started the mitzvah before you did the mitzvah, as long as the mitzvah is still continuing, as long as then you did something with the mitzvah, you can make a bracha on it, and it's still considered that you're doing it before you did the mitzvah. So technically, a person, if he is getting up early, he wants to daven early. So what he does is he can put on tzitzis technically before Mashiach, and make a bracha afterwards by being mashvat tziyaseh. And then he starts davening Mashiach, and he can go in order like that. Truth is, technically, he could get up even earlier, and he could start Francis earlier, and he could daven up until Yitzhak Moedes, until Berachas Kishma, and he does that by Mishiyaker, and makes a bracha on tzitzis before Berachas Kishma. The problem is tefillin. And this is what we can get to over here. Simon Lamed, yeah. Are we brief? Okay. First things, check me out. I'm joking.
Someone put on college and phone, they don't make a bracha on the college.
That's another question, but not for now. Okay. So in Hilchos Tefillin, so there's an interesting thing that people are not necessarily aware of. People tend to say that women are part of Tefillin because mitzvah man gramahi, therefore they're part of Tefillin. It's true. It's a mitzvah man gramahi. It happens to be a time-bound mitzvah, but it's not time-bound the way people think it is. It's not time-bound because Laila allows man tefillin, because Laila's man tefillin. Technically, by night, you do have a chiyuv to put on tefillin. Not for today, for tomorrow, but you have a chiyuv to put on tefillin by night as well. The reason we don't put on tefillin by night is because it's forbidden to put on tefillin by night, because you might fall asleep. It's man shina. You're not sleeping tefillin. You can't guard it properly. So it will be forbidden to put on tefillin by night. The reason why women are part of tefillin is because Shabbos is part of tefillin. Okay, so it's still magara.
What?
Because Shabbos is absolved from putting on tefillin. Now, in the second paragraph, he says over here like this. But our sages forbade us from putting on tefillin by night. Why? And therefore, we'll be forbidden to put on tefillin before it gets morning. He says, now, Leisha Shachar, we already established this technically day, it's already morning. So why can't you put on tefillin by Leisha Shachar? So in the third paragraph, he says, even after it became technically daybreak, which we said before is something that's not so clear, but it's much before Netzacham, it's also much before Mashiach, and it's technically day for all mitzvah Torah. I mentioned that Mishnah. But still, you cannot put on tefillin at that time. You can't put it on a time that most people are still sleeping, even if there's a minority of people getting up, because then you're afraid you fall asleep. Later on, the author was a little more medical. I didn't quote over here because he says if you're getting up in the morning, you have to get up, and he's not. You're probably not going to fall asleep. He's more medical. But this is the Ikar Halach over here that you can't put on tefillin before Mishiach. It says the Hainu ad shiyor hayayim b'chei shiras chavei b'chei arba amis v'akiranu. So you can't put on before Mashiach. So in places that they have big problems with this man, and if not for the Aguda that they advocated for us, since get out of it, so then we probably would have had this in most civilized places, like New York latitude. So then then many people would have had to do these things by davening possibly without tefillin, or bringing tefillin by yishtabach, or so on and so further, because it would be very problematic to daven properly throughout the winter. Yeah. Okay. So you have over here, but with regards to other mitzvahs,
Throughout the winter,
throughout the winter, you have daily savings time throughout the winter. So now Nitzachama in the winter time is between 7 and 7:30. It fluctuates better. It would be between 8 and 8:30 Nitzachama, and Mishiaker would be somewhat, sometime between 7 and 8. Very problematic for many people who have to work.
in higher latitudes, it's even a bigger problem.
Correct. That's why not too many. I mean, it's disparaging of people live in different places, but it's hard. There are many places that.
Russia was a much bigger problem than the north and here.
Correct. Eden didn't live so much in Petersburg. There's a ha'ara from the Frierdiker Rebbe. Remind me this. There's a ha'ara of the Frierdiker Rebbe in his Hashem Samaiser, in his memoir, where he writes about his incarcerations. On the first page, he writes about the Seder Yom, exactly what happened that day, the day Tisvav Simon when he was arrested. And he says what time Yechidus was, what time Dav Ma'ariv, was supper and everything, and when they came to the house, and he brings a ha'ara over there, what time Dav Ma'ariv, I believe it was Halb Elef, right? It was 10:30 at night, and he says we have a Kabbalah that was the time that Alter Rebbe Dav Ma'ariv when he was in Petersburg, which means it wasn't ideal. It was sure before his man. Those who know Petersburg in June or in late May, it's sure before his man. But that was what they did because that was what they were able to. Just finish up over here that you find over here and some Tapeches with regards to Halo, Tafku Peches with regards to Shofar, and Tafshin Beis, which is not Alter Rebbe. We don't have Alter Rebbe over there, but with regards to Lulav, all those halachis. There's no idea of Bishiyaker. The halach is you can technically do it from the Shachar. The Chadchila you do it Mishnei Tzachama because it's not about seeing. So that's that. There's a lot more to discuss. Exactly what the gather over here of Alisa Shachar is and how long it takes. It's very, very much dependent upon what we call a shir lichas mil. Mentioned before, after I mentioned the Shulchan Aruch about 4 mil. This is the Gemara Pesachim tells us how long it takes people to walk throughout the day, how many mil they can walk throughout the day, and it's either 4 or 5 mil in the morning and the evening, which means from Alis till Nates, and the same thing for Shkiyat Chavim. And this is a major discussion about the difference between Tam and the Goinim. But the regard to Alisa Shachar per se, notwithstanding the fact that the Alter Rebbe, most definitely everybody agrees, converts the minutes and Shlichus Mil into degrees, but it's still questionable exactly how many degrees that is, because how many minutes it is. And according to Alter Rebbe, it seems the consensus over here locally is it's about 16.9 degrees below the horizon is considered to be Alisa Shachar.
What's the makar?
The makar machlekes is a Gemara in Pesachim, Gemara in Shabbos. It's a major machlekes. You have Rebbeinu Tam and the Ri over there in Tosfos that discuss it, and since that time it's discussed by every one of the Rishonim almost, and by the daily Achronim. So I guess I'm thankful for the schus to be able to teach halach in this machon, and hopefully we should be zeichet to be able to see that Kshiyor Hayom. Amen.